Ow. Ow. Ain't that a nice way to start off a video? That's a little too bright. Oh, fuck. God damn it. Well, ain't that a nice way to start off a review? Hold on one second, guys. Can I push this back without knocking this over? Oh, fuck it. Lovely start. Okay, that should be better. What nice production value. Ugh. I need a haircut. Well, it'd be nice if my goddamn electric razor hadn't crapped out on me. I'll stay like that. Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to Super Kaiju Binge. And also to the latest double feature, where today I and myself alone will be talking about two of my favorite Godzilla movies of all time, though one of them is not quite as held in high regard as I thought it was. 1974's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and 1975's Terror of Mechagodzilla. I don't know much about the production for both of these films, other than, well, 1974 was the 20th anniversary of Godzilla, and I guess Toho decided they wanted to do something a little extra special for the occasion. So, well, let's see. Is there any production notes? No, there is not. Damn, there's like nothing. I do know that the script was written by Shinichi Sekizawa, and they just wanted to do some kind of Godzilla versus a mechanical version of himself. And lo and behold, this movie came out on Godzilla's 20th anniversary and was met with good reception, but it was not nearly as successful. As I stated in my Godzilla vs. Megalon review, Godzilla vs. Megalon is one of the lowest grossing Godzilla movies of the whole franchise. And Mechagodzilla 74 made a bit more than Megalon, but it wasn't as successful as Toho had hoped it would be. But this still did not deter them from continuing ahead in 1975 with the release of Terror of Mechagodzilla. Terror of Mechagodzilla was the Mechagodzilla 74, for starters, was, of course, the very first Godzilla movie to introduce Mechagodzilla, one of Godzilla's most iconic and recognizable adversaries. One of the first to include some kind of mythic-esque elements to the film's story. And it would also be Anguirus's very last appearance on screen until 2004, 30 years later, with Godzilla Final Wars. And as for Terror of Mechagodzilla is kind of a bittersweet movie and bittersweet experience, because there was a lot of lasts for the Godzilla franchise. It would be the last time that Godzilla would be a superhero or any kind of non-villainous role until Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla 20 years after this. No, 19 years. It would be the last time that we would ever see Akihiko Hirata playing a main character in a Godzilla movie, because he would pass away right before the Return of Godzilla would be released. It would be the last time that we would ever see aliens in a Godzilla movie until Godzilla Final Wars. And it was also the very last time that Ishiro Honda ever directed a Godzilla movie. This was, in fact, Ishiro Honda's final movie that he fully directed. After this, he did work with Akira Kurosawa on some of his movies as like an assistant co-director, as well, I think an assistant producer on those. But yeah, this will be the final kaiju movie that Ishiro Honda would direct in his entire career. The reason why has never really been given. Not to spread false information, but apparently, according to Adam Noyes, he did it because he needed the money. Though I've been told by Patrick Galvin, that apparently was not the case. So the reason why is unknown. Though I'm sure that part of it was because, fun fact about Terror of Mechagodzilla, to this day, Terror of Mechagodzilla reigns as the lowest grossing Godzilla movie of the entire franchise. And its reception is kind of mixed. Some like it and some dislike it for various reasons. The reason why this was the lowest grossing Godzilla movie, and this was, of course, as well, to be the very last Godzilla movie for a record 9 years. I believe that's the longest time that the franchise has ever... Yeah, it has. The longest time the franchise has ever gone on hiatus was 9 years. We wouldn't receive another Godzilla movie until The Return of Godzilla in 1984, which was a complete reboot to the franchise. Why this was happening, I'm not exactly sure. I do know that apparently there were plans to continue the Godzilla franchise after Terror of Mechagodzilla, but there was a menagerie of things going on. The Japanese film studio business still kind of being in a disarray due to the success of television. But even then, like all the toku shows like Kamen Rider and Ultraman and all the anime shows that were going on at the time were kind of stealing movies' thunder. But also at this time, there was a gas shortage in Japan going on at the time, and every studio or every business in Japan at the time was suffering because of this. So it was also franchise fatigue because not just in the 70s, but the Godzilla franchise had been going on a consistent base for 21 years at this point. So we had 15 Godzilla movies over the course of 21 years. I think franchise fatigue was definitely set in, and it was setting in bad at this point. So yes, Terror of Mechagodzilla is indeed the lowest grossing Godzilla film, and it would be the last Godzilla movie that Toho would make for a record 9 years, which is kind of a bittersweet ending to this series because I still think there was some more steam that this series could have given. But with all that being said, my personal history with the Mechagodzilla movies is, well, for Mechagodzilla 74, it's very special. So, my mom had just moved into, and a couple years prior, my mom had just been reintroduced back into my life because very quickly, my mom actually disappeared for 3 years when I was about 7 or so. So she was gone for 3 years, and she had just come back into my life. So about a year and a half or 2 years after that, she had moved into this duplex and was new in the area, and I was just absolutely ecstatic. I just got my room set up and all of my, at that point, measly belongings spread throughout my room. And Mom decided to take me to a little place called Blockbuster. And I'd never heard of it, believe it or not, at the time. And I found that Blockbuster, of course, was a place where you could rent movies. And Mom was willing to rent me a couple. And I was looking around, not really knowing what to look for, but I was looking at this giant collection of movies and just seeing all kinds of horror movies and action movies and comedies and just stuff that I'd never ever seen before. And then I come across their Godzilla selection and being absolutely blown away. I was like, oh my God, this place has Godzilla movies. And at the time, I was going through I was going through a Godzilla drought because for the longest time, the only Godzilla movies that I owned was 1998 Godzilla vs. Gigan and Mechagodzilla 2, all on VHS. So I found their Godzilla selection. And the very first one that I rented, and I begged Mom to get it for me, was the original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. So I took it home, I sat down, and I watched the shit out of this movie. The very first time I watched this movie, it was a whole different experience. This is one awesome-ass, special-ass movie. Mechagodzilla 74, ever since the first time seeing it, has always been a big favorite of mine. I have tons of fond memories regarding this film, and I've always considered it to be one of the very best of the entire franchise. It's just so damn fun and entertaining and just a total blast to watch. And as for Terror of Mechagodzilla, not long after, I did know, because I started using the internet, and I quickly was aware that Mechagodzilla 74 had a sequel, being, of course, Terror of Mechagodzilla. But it wasn't until when I was in 5th grade, my stepmom had bought me the Classic Media Godzilla Collection box set for my birthday. I still remember when I got it. Ironically, both of my moms have gotten me a whole bunch of Godzilla stuff. Mom rented me a whole bunch of Godzilla movies from Blockbuster and even bought me a couple off of bought me a lot off of Amazon. And my stepmom has gotten me the Godzilla collection from Classic Media and the Criterion Godzilla collection. That's having a little bit of an existential realization here. But anyway, so she got me the Classic Media set, and Terror of Mechagodzilla was the third Godzilla movie that I watched in that set. And I do remember at first it didn't impress me nearly as much as 74 did. But as the years went on, Terror of Mechagodzilla grew on me quite a bit. And I do still consider it to be one of my favorite Godzilla movies, and I think it's one of the best. But upon this most recent viewing, I still do say it. I know that Terror has its fans out there, including like Zazubar. He considers it to be better than Mechagodzilla 74, only marginally. But me, myself, Terror Mechagodzilla is just a little bit of a step down from 74. And I kind of hate to say it, but that might have to do with Ishiro Honda's direction. But I'll talk about that when I get to my pros and cons. But overall, I just don't have that much to say about Terror Mechagodzilla. It's a fun film, and it is a well-made and entertaining film. Hang on one sec. But overall, it's just not quite as fun as 74. Okay. So, with all that being said, let us get into the plot of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. In Okinawa, an Azumi priestess has a vision of a city being destroyed by a giant monster via stock footage of Ghidorah, Manda, and Rodan. Meanwhile, Masaiko Shimizu discovers a type of metal not found on Earth while spelunking and takes it to a Professor Miyajima for examination. Professor Miyajima being played also by Akihiko Hirata. An excavation led by Masaiko's brother Keisuke uncovers a chamber filled with ancient artifacts and a mural bearing an ominous prophecy. When a black mountain appears above the clouds, a huge monster will arise to try and destroy the world. But when the red moon sets and the sun rises in the west, two monsters shall appear to save the world. Keisuke is joined by archaeologist Saiko Kaneshiro, who translates the prophecy and takes a statue bearing the likeness of Okinawa's guardian monster King Caesar to study. Two men stalk them, with one claiming to be a reporter while the other attempts to steal the statue, but fails and flees. Following the appearance of a black cloud resembling a mountain, Godzilla emerges from Mount Fuji and begins a destructive rampage, despite having become tolerant of humans within the past years. Godzilla's ally Anguirus confronts it only to be nearly killed by having his jaw torn and being forced to retreat. Keisuke arrives shortly after to check on Masaiko and Miyajima. Godzilla's rampage continues until another Godzilla emerges and battles it. During this fight, via revealing that it is a cybernetic organism, living tissue over metal endoskeleton, the first Godzilla is revealed to be a massive robot armed with advanced weaponry, of course named Mechagodzilla, made from the same strange metal, later revealed to be space titanium. Godzilla is severely wounded, but inflicts some damage on Mechagodzilla in the franchise's very first beam clash, which is awesome, before both monsters retreat. Miyajima hypothesizes, based on Mechagodzilla's advanced technology and composition, that the robot is an alien superweapon. Keisuke and Saiko take the statue back to the temple, but are confronted by the same thief once again. During the fight, the skin on half of the stranger's face melts away, revealing an ape-like visage. Planet of the Apes movies, of course. The intruder attempts to kill Keisuke, but a bullet from an unseen gunman kills him before Keisuke and Saiko catch a brief glimpse of the reporter. Concurrently, Godzilla arrives on Monster Island during a thunderstorm and is struck by lightning multiple times, reinvigorating himself and somehow gaining a new ability, in one of the most epic scenes in the entire Godzilla franchise. Masaiko Miyajima and his daughter Ikuko explore the cave where the space titanium was first found, but are captured by ape-like aliens from the third planet of the black hole, who plan to use Mechagodzilla to conquer Earth. Their leader, Kuronuma, played by Goro Mutsumi, who's a total sleazeball, forces Miyajima to repair the robot. While Saiko checks into a hotel and guards the statue, Keisuke leaves to meet Masaiko at the caves, only to encounter the reporter, who reveals his first name as Nanbara and that he is an Interpol agent who has been tracking the aliens. After Nanbara and Keisuke infiltrate the alien base and free the prisoners, Keisuke and Ikuko leave to pick up Saiko and the statue, while Miyajima, Nanbara, and Masaiko stay behind, only to be recaptured by Kuronuma. The next morning, a lunar eclipse results in a red moon and a mirage of the sun rising in the west. Seeing this, the team realizes they have to awaken King Caesar. They meet with the priestess and her grandfather and place the statue in the temple, revealing King Caesar's resting place. As Kuronuma dispatches Mechagodzilla, the priestess sings for 3 fucking minutes, to awaken King Caesar, and Godzilla appears shortly after. The two monsters join forces to fight Mechagodzilla in one of the most spectacular fights in the entire franchise. And when the robot tries to escape, Godzilla uses its stored electricity to create an electromagnetic field around himself to pull Mechagodzilla towards him before tearing off its head, causing the robot to explode. While the aliens are distracted, Nanbara and the others free themselves, kill their captors, and sabotage the base, fleeing as it explodes. With the enemy defeated, Godzilla heads out to sea, and King Caesar returns to his resting place while the humans rejoice, thus ending the film and rolling into Terror of Mechagodzilla, which is a direct sequel to this film. And the plot of Terror of Mechagodzilla being... Hang on. Following the events of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, Interpol agents search for Mechagodzilla's remains at the bottom of the Okinawan Sea in the hopes of gathering information on the robot's builders, the alien Simians, which is a far easier name than aliens from the third planet of the black hole. However, their submarine is attacked by a giant aquatic dinosaur called Titanosaurus, and the crew vanishes. Interpol launches an investigation into the incident, and with the help of marine biologist Akira Ichinose, they trace Titanosaurus to a reclusive mad scientist named Shinzo Mifune, of course, once again being played by Akihiko Hirata in his final Godzilla movie, who wants to destroy mankind, because of course. While the group is visiting the scientist's old home, they meet Mifune's daughter, Katsura, who claims her father is dead and that she burned his notes about Titanosaurus at his request. Kind of reminiscent of Dr. Serizawa, which I'm sure was intentional. Unbeknownst to Interpol, the living Mifune is visited by Suda, aide to the Simian leader Mughal, played by the same actor but playing a different character, as Kuronuma, who is leading a project to rebuild Mechagodzilla. Mughal offers the Simian service to Mifune so that their respective monsters can wipe out mankind and allow them to rebuild the world for themselves. Complicating matters, Ichinose falls in love with Katsura and unwittingly gives her Interpol's information on the Simians, Mechagodzilla, and Titanosaurus. She is also revealed to be a cyborg, having undergone cybernetic surgery after she was nearly killed during one of her father's experiments as a child, and implanted with Mechagodzilla's control device. Additionally, an impatient Mifune releases Titanosaurus on Yokosuda without the alien's permission. While Interpol discovers the dinosaur is vulnerable to supersonic waves, Katsura destroys their supersonic wave oscillator. However, Godzilla arrives, oh yeah, this is a Godzilla movie, and easily defeats Titanosaurus, causing the latter to retreat. When Ichinose visits Katsura, the Simians capture him and force him to watch as they unleash Mechagodzilla 2 and Titanosaurus on Tokyo, while Interpol agents struggles to repair their wave oscillator, and the Japanese armed forces struggle to fend off the two kaiju. Godzilla arrives, but is initially outmatched until Interpol distracts Titanosaurus with the repaired wave oscillator, allowing Godzilla to focus on Mechagodzilla 2. Interpol agents infiltrate the aliens' hideout, rescue Ichinose, and kill Mifune and many of the aliens. The remaining Simians attempt to escape, but Godzilla shoots down their ships with his atomic breath. The wounded Katsura shoots herself to destroy Mechagodzilla 2's control device and dies in Ichinose's arms. With the robot non-functional, Godzilla tosses it into a chasm before blasting it with his atomic breath, causing it to explode and get buried under tons of rubble. With help from Interpol, Godzilla then defeats Titanosaurus, who then returns to the sea, ending the movie on a pretty damn dour and bittersweet end. And as is, this is the end of the Showa Godzilla franchise. So how about these plots? For Mechagodzilla 74, it's fucking fantastic. It's so innovative, so fun, so intriguing, so fascinating, so mythic and larger than life and badass and awesome and entertaining and just so much damn fun. That's the biggest thing that you take away from Mechagodzilla 74. It ain't trying to rewrite film history. It ain't trying to introduce some new innovative techniques for filmmaking. It is just trying to be a fun, whimsical, entertaining, fun movie. And it succeeds at that 110%. And as for Terror of Mechagodzilla, the story here is very, very strong. The film has great continuity with its predecessor, which is something that the Showa Godzilla series kind of has off and on, but it really isn't. It's never been as strong here, or at least it hasn't been this level of strong ever since the Showa Godzilla trilogy with Mothra vs. Godzilla, Gijo, Three-Headed Monster, and Invasion of the Astro Monster. It hasn't been that, the continuity hasn't been that strong since then. And overall, Terror of Mechagodzilla, there's not as much to say about it, but the story is still very engaging and it's a lot of fun and it's well told. The return of Ishiro Honda, for the most part, is welcome with open arms. It feels more like a classic 60s Godzilla movie with the 70s tropes of more violence, more gore, and a darker tone, which is good in some areas, but also kind of bad in other areas. But overall, the plot for Terror of Mechagodzilla is still really, really solid. Again, though, it's just not quite as strong as Mechagodzilla 74. What doesn't help is the franchise fatigue. You can kind of feel it in Terror of Mechagodzilla, despite the filmmaker's best efforts. But still, these plots are all really, really good. They're some of the best of the entire franchise. And there's a whole bunch of good things that I can say about both. So with that being said, let us jump into the pros and cons of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Pro number one is Mechagodzilla himself. Mechagodzilla is absolutely fantastic in this first film. He has a great presence. He has a great personality. He's got a great set of abilities. He's just a very good ultimate rival for Godzilla, because I've stated before, like every superhero has their arch nemesis, but more often than not, I don't consider that arch nemesis to be their arch nemesis. Like, to look at superheroes, take Spider-Man. Green Goblin is considered to be Spider-Man's arch nemesis. I personally don't. I think that's Venom. Take Batman. The Joker is considered his arch rival. I've always considered that to be Bane. Take Superman. He has a couple villains that are considered his arch rival. Darkseid is more the arch rival of the Justice League as a whole, even though Darkseid works very well as a Superman villain. But it's either Lex Luthor or General Zod or Doomsday. And me and myself, I consider Doomsday to be Superman's ultimate rival. Or let's take another one. The Hulk. the Abomination is considered Hulk's ultimate rival. I personally don't. I say that's Red Hulk. And this all has to do with the same thing. All of these, not so much with Doomsday, that's General Zod, but we'll use General Zod as another example. I believe every hero's ultimate rival is themselves, like a cracked mirror version of themselves. So I consider Bane to be a dark version of Batman. Venom is pretty much the antithesis of Spider-Man. General Zod is another Kryptonian. He's an evil Kryptonian who has all the same abilities plus more of Superman. And Red Hulk, it looks exactly the same except that he's red and he has very similar abilities to the Hulk. Not to mention, too, Red Hulk is the Hulk's father-in-law, General Ross. There's that personal connection, but also Red Hulk is pretty much an evil version of Hulk. I believe that every hero or every iconic character, their ultimate foe should be considered a dark, evil version of themselves. And Mechagodzilla is a very good candidate for that stereotype. The robotic doppelganger pretty much is a stronger and in many ways superior version of Godzilla. That, of course, being Mechagodzilla. Even putting past my distaste for King Ghidorah, I still have always considered Mechagodzilla to be the ultimate rival to Godzilla. A big part of that is because in a lot of Mechagodzilla's appearances, Mechagodzilla has come the closest to actually either killing or defeating Godzilla. To quickly go through the rest of the franchise, Mechagodzilla cleans Godzilla's clock in this movie. In Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, Mechagodzilla comes like this close to fully killing Godzilla. In both of the I'll say Tokyo SOS, Mechagodzilla full on defeats Godzilla with the help of Mothra. And had the anime version of Mechagodzilla actually taken full shape and not turn into the lameness that is Mechagodzilla City, that version of Mechagodzilla would have come very close to defeating Godzilla. And of course, as we've seen in Godzilla vs. Kong, despite the fact I think Godzilla would have fared a lot better had he not just kicked the shit out of Kong, Mechagodzilla comes very close to defeating Godzilla in that movie as well. So on a very consistent basis, Mechagodzilla has been the one to fully clean Godzilla's clock. Not so much King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah gives Godzilla a good fight, but especially as the Showa series went on, Godzilla learned more and more and more on how to handle King Ghidorah by himself. So that's why I do consider Mechagodzilla to be Godzilla's ultimate rival. And his first appearance is certainly a very, very, very strong introduction. Mechagodzilla is absolutely fantastic in this movie. I love his powers. I love his roar. I love his theme. I love his design. It's very 70s, but still, it's a great design. It definitely looks like a robotic version of the Showa Godzilla. I love this version of Mechagodzilla. It's so fucking awesome. And I do consider Mechagodzilla and Mechagodzilla in Terror of Mechagodzilla to be two separate entities, even though it's a very similar design. There are some differences, and as I'll discuss with Terror of Mechagodzilla, I do think there are some differences personality-wise, but this first Mechagodzilla in this movie from 74 is absolutely spectacular. And something that I confirmed for myself, despite the fact that Mechagodzilla doesn't really have a whole lot of screen time, not counting when he's fake Godzilla, you could throw that in too, but Mechagodzilla himself, he's only active in 2 scenes, and he spends a decent chunk of the movie being operated on. but he's only in the movie for maybe 8 to 12 minutes. I think it's like maybe 10, but still. But this is a good example of a character that doesn't have a whole lot of screen time, but it still makes a very good impression. You remember all the shit that Mechagodzilla does, and he makes up for the fact that he doesn't have a whole lot of screen time by being entertaining as fuck to watch. Yeah, Mechagodzilla is easily one of the best Godzilla kaiju of the entire franchise. Easily one of my favorite kaiju of all, and definitely one of my favorite giant robots. Mechagodzilla in this movie is so fucking awesome. But pro number 2, of course, being the original, Godzilla in this movie is also pretty damn awesome. Again, Godzilla doesn't have a whole lot of screen time in this movie, but when he is on screen, he makes a really good impression because of how badass he is in this movie. There's not really any goofy elements to Godzilla in this movie. He's just a no-nonsense, I'm here to fuck shit up while also get my ass kicked fighter in this movie. He's just so badass. He's all no holds barred, guns blazing, beating the living shit out of Mechagodzilla and just doing all that he can to take down Mechagodzilla in this movie. Now, he gets his ass kicked, but he also puts up a very good fight against Mechagodzilla. And of course, he gives witness to some of the best Godzilla moments of the entire franchise. His appearance, coming straight out of buttfuck nowhere, is random, but it's still cool. His very first beam clash with Mechagodzilla is awesome. When he's storing up all that lightning on Monster Island, it's one of the best Godzilla moments of the entire franchise. He's just roaring to the skies and repeatedly getting struck by lightning, and you feel like he's just pretty much going Super Saiyan, especially when he lets out that long 3 times looped Showa Godzilla roar, and then finally he reaches his peak, and he just starts spurting out sparks and smoke and fire out of his back like crazy. It's an awesome spectacle and an awesome sight to behold. And when he shows up to fight Mechagodzilla at the very end, it's just so damn fun. Mechagodzilla is beating the shit out of him left and right, but Godzilla keeps coming. And whenever he gets put on his ass, he gets right back up. And he does land some good blows on Mechagodzilla. And of course, when he turns himself into a magnet and then destroys Mechagodzilla by ripping off his head, literally, it's just so damn awesome and so damn fun. You root for Godzilla in this movie the entire time. You're just like, fuck yes, defeat the monster. Go, go, Godzilla. It's great. Pro number 3 is overall the story and the plot to this movie is awesome. It's very gone are the elements of feeling like it's a repeat or ripoff of Invasion of the Astro Monster or Destroy All Monsters. Now, the aliens wanting to use Earth as their new home is nothing new. But oddly, it doesn't feel cliche here, partially because the aliens actually are interesting and fun to watch. More on them later. Oh, and of course, totally forgot, a word from our sponsor. But overall, the plot is very, very solid. You don't hear that many kaiju movies using the prophecy cliche, but here it's actually quite well done. But it's a really good mix of course, the 70s kaiju film. And also gone are the, well, I mean, no, I would say gone are the tokusatsu elements. Like this doesn't feel like an extended episode of either Ultraman or Spectre Man. This feels like a Godzilla movie without any tokusatsu elements in it. This feels more like its own thing. And not so much like they're just following a trend. But yeah, it's a really good mix of kaiju action, corporate espionage, and alien invasion stuff. In that sense, it's a tad similar to Godzilla versus Gigan, but I agree with something Zazubar said. Godzilla versus Gigan feels like the blueprint of a formula that would have been perfected with this film. I do still prefer Gigan over this movie, very marginally. It's like a hair's breadth difference. But this does feel more like a competently made film. More on that later. But um, yeah, this movie's plot and story are absolutely spectacular. Pro number 4 is the cast. The characters overall are very likable, very entertaining, very engaging, and you grow attached to them as you follow them throughout the film. They're not stupid, they're not incompetent, they're not hippies, they're not cringy. They're just people who somehow get caught up in this alien conspiracy, and they're all working together to use their skills and their knowledge to try to defeat the aliens. And they know how to think on their feet. They know how to use their smarts. And they know how to work together. It's very refreshing. I just realized this is one of few Godzilla movies. Well, not few, but one where people are actively trying to work together in order to solve a problem and save the world and save others too. Um, like there's no tension between I think Masako and the Interpol agent. As soon as Masako learns he's an Interpol agent, he's just like all gung ho by assisting him in like either knocking out aliens or saving prisoners or whatever. It also helps that the chemistry that the characters have is very, very genuine. They have moments where there's like great synergy of working together, and there's also a couple good humorous moments too, especially with Masako. Masako and what's her name? The archaeologist chick. I think her name is also Psycho. Masako is always one or two steps ahead of Psycho. Like when she and her are going to Tokyo together to talk to another famous archaeologist. He's all acting nonchalant, like, "Oh, here, grab me, give me this. I'll go up and say hello." And she's like, "What are you doing? You're gonna get yourself kicked out." Then he opens up the door, and the played by Hiroshi Koizumi, by the way, which this would also be the final Godzilla movie that Hiroshi Koizumi would be in until Tokyo SOS, I believe. 29 years later. But Hiroshi Koizumi's character, he's just like, Masako, welcome home. And he says, "Well, hello, uncle." And she's just like, "Oh, you asshole. You could have told me he was your uncle." And then there's another scene where when the thief falls overboard after he's shot by the Interpol agent carrying the statue, he's like, "Oh, he fell overboard with the statue." But as soon as they reach Okinawa, Kenji Sahara, in one of his cameo appearances, comes out and says, "Here's the statue. You told me it was important, so I locked it in a safe." Turns out the thief fell overboard with a duplicate statue, unbeknownst to Psycho, but knowing to Psycho, or Masako. So I really like Masako. He's one of my favorite leading men in a Godzilla movie. He knows how to use his knowledge of his his expertise, but also just thinking on his feet and working together with others. He just knows how to operate very well, and I think he would make for a really good Interpol agent. The actor playing him would play an Interpol agent in the next movie, but it is a different character. But still, I guess you could say and he dies too, so maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. But still, Masako's great. And the female characters are all good. They're all helpful and useful, mostly just providing some exposition, but they're not damsels in distress, thankfully. The Interpol agent also is a real badass. He's kind of a smartass, but he knows how to think on his feet. He knows how to use his weapons, like his silenced revolver is his best friend. He knows how to fight, and he knows how to detect tricks and traps very well. He kind of reminds me of Philippe from Godzilla 1998. Overall, he's great. Um, let's see. Professor Shimizu is a very likable scientist as well. He also knows how to think on his feet and work well with others. He provides exposition, but he never goes overboard with it. He kind of reminds me of Toru from Godzilla versus Godzilla versus Hedorah. Though he does speak in a bit more technobabble than Toru does from Hedorah, but still, it's you can understand what he's talking about enough. And he's overall likable and well acted. Akihiko Hirata plays all of his characters well, but this is certainly one of his best. Overall, the characters are all great. They're all likable. They have great chemistry, and they all work together very well to solve this movie's problem. Pro number 5 is the Simians. These aliens are awesome. These are probably my favorite aliens in the entire Godzilla franchise because they're threatening, kind of scary because the sounds and their appearance. It's kind of like body horror, and the sounds they make, like when they partially transform into apes, it's kind of creepy and a bit disturbing. Like the nasty sound effects are kind of gross, and it's a bit of a they have like dark black thick fur and a dark green skin that makes them look freaky. The music that plays when they transform into their human forms is kind of eerie too. It's a little reminiscent of Hedorah. But overall, they're threatening. They don't come off as being incompetent. Like they're not the Ceetopians, that's for damn sure. They're a good foil for the human characters. But they're, like I said, they're threatening. Their plan actually works pretty well. They have an intimidating super weapon / kaiju. And Kuronoma, he's a total slime ball. He's one of my favorite Godzilla villains because of how slimy he is. The actor looks like he's totally having a ball by playing not so much like a Doctor Who or Cesar Romero from Latitude Zero type villain. He's kind of like Kenji Sahara's character from Mothra vs. Godzilla. He's very slimy, but he looks like he knows he is, and he enjoys being slimy. He's always got this like shit-eating grin and calm facade as he's pointing a gun in your face type persona. Yeah, he's a total slime ball, and he's a lot of fun to watch. One of the best Godzilla villains, in my opinion. Pro number 6 is the pacing overall in this movie is very, very good. There's not a scene that drags. It helps that the characters are all likable and the movie's story and plot is very well conceived, in my opinion. Yeah, never a scene drags. Nothing feels out of place. Everything feels like it's where it needs to be perfectly. Also, the movie is never boring because the movie is just so damn fun. Shit. I really need to start numbering my pros. Pro number 7 is the production value overall. Like, this movie does not look cheap at all. The production value and the film quality and the quality of the effects is overall a lot higher than the previous movie. And I do think this movie had a bigger budget than Godzilla versus, well, I think pretty sure it did. Yeah, than Godzilla versus Megalon. Everything here just looks like they had more time to flush out the movie and take their time and make things look nice and pretty with spit and polish and such. It just feels more like a well-made film. It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't look cheap. It doesn't feel like a TV movie made into theatrical film. This feels like a full theatrical experience, and the high production value certainly helps. But speaking of which, Pro number 8 is the music score by Masaru Sato. This would also be the last Godzilla movie to be scored by Masaru Sato. His presence will be missed, but at least his final Godzilla movie, he goes out with a big bang. All of the music in this movie is fucking awesome. Once again, no use of the Godzilla theme, but still, the music that we have here is fucking great. The Mechagodzilla theme is so cheesy, but it's so fucking awesome. Dun 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 dun. Da 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 da. Na, na, na. It's awesome. It's so damn catchy and so fucking entertaining to listen to. It is absolutely stellar. So fucking great. Masaru Sato's final Godzilla score for his final Godzilla movie, it's fucking great. It's very fitting. It's 70s. It's cheesy, but it's so fun and so entertaining. Pro number 8 is the special effects. The special effects are top notch in this film. Terryoshi Nakano fully comes into his own with this film, in my opinion. Like, his effects style is firmly and permanently cemented in this movie. He's got, and especially with this movie, I feel like it's a good balance of having of just being good in all areas. Good wire work, good composite shots, good green screen effects, great suitimation, great explosions, great beam effects, great fight scenes. More on that in a minute. Overall, everything here just feels top notch, and like everybody was firing on all cylinders. They're like, hey, we want to make a big bombastic movie for Godzilla's 20th anniversary. Let's go big or go home. And they definitely go big. Not really much to say about the special effects. They're just great. Mechagodzilla looks and moves like a robot. The King Caesar suit is very well made and very well detailed and definitely looks great as an original kaiju. The Godzilla suit in this movie is a big, big improvement over the Meguro Goji suit. It looks like they pretty much did a big retooling of this suit. They kept the head design, but they got rid of those patches all over Godzilla's skin. It looks a bit more beefy, so I think this probably weighed like 120 or 30 pounds. So it looks more like a fleshed out Godzilla suit. It doesn't look nearly as cheap or anorexic or Kermit the Frog-esque as the Meguro Goji suit. It's a lot better in this movie. And overall, the one flub in the effects, honestly, that I noticed was when the Azumi princess, excuse me, is sitting on the beach singing the King Caesar. It's very obvious that was a composite shot, and it was pretty bad, and it stuck out like a sore thumb. And they kind of lingered on it a little too long for my tastes. But other than that bad composite shot, all the rest of the special effects are fucking phenomenal. And Terryoshi Nakano was definitely bringing his A game with this film. And the last pro number 10, is the goddamn kaiju action / monster fights. It's so awesome. Fake Godzilla's fight with Anguirus and his rampage in an industrial area at night. It's a bit short, but it's sweet and great and fun and entertaining. Though it's a little disappointing that once again, just Anguirus can't catch a damn break and get his ass kicked. But the industrial area rampage is a lot of fun. It's interesting seeing a Showa Godzilla design not have a blue atomic breath. And actually, one more brief fun fact about this movie. I actually do think this was one of the very first Godzilla movies I ever saw, because not only did I see this movie when I rented it from Blockbuster, but when my dad and my mom were still together, I remember visiting. They were visiting a friend of my mom's, and that friend had like a farm. but they were also Godzilla fans. It was there when I witnessed for the very first time the scene from Mothra versus Godzilla, where Godzilla comes out of the ground. I always remembered that because that's one of Godzilla's most famous appearances in his history. But also, not long after that, I remember seeing the scene where Godzilla fights fake Godzilla from this movie, and I was blown away seeing two Godzillas, one with blue atomic breath and one with red atomic breath fighting. I thought, I was like, oh my God, is this the new Godzilla fighting the old? And when I actually rewatched this movie for the first time, renting it from Blockbuster, I always remembered that image. And then when I saw this, I was like, oh, this is the movie. This is that movie I saw so long ago. You ever have those moments where you see something as a young kid, then you see it years later, and you're just like, oh, there it is. And then, of course, Mechagodzilla's fight with King Caesar. I'll get to that in a minute. It is fun. But when Godzilla shows up and it's Godzilla and King Caesar versus Mechagodzilla, that entire last like 20 minutes of the movie is just nonstop entertainment and fun and just awesomeness. Yeah, the monster fights and the monster action in this movie are just absolutely stellar. Some of the best of the entire franchise. Do I have any cons? Only one. I will say I still think this movie is a tad too short. That's just because this movie is so awesome and entertaining. I just want more. But that's the case with a lot of my favorite Godzilla movies. But the one problem that I have with this movie is King Caesar. He's lame. He has a good design, and I like his roar. It's a much more growly and guttural version of the Toho Kong roars and growls. It sounds a lot more like a lion rather than a gorilla here, which makes sense because King Caesar looks like a lion dog dragon hybrid. But the problem with King Caesar, one, he's got a bit too much buildup, and it takes a little too long for him to wake up. But the main problem is that he doesn't live up to his buildup. He wakes up. At first, he has the advantage over Mechagodzilla, but very quickly, Mechagodzilla just beats the ever-living crap out of King Caesar. And King Caesar barely gets a hit in until the very end of the fight when Godzilla shows up. When Godzilla's got him stuck to his body and he just urges King Caesar to smash into him a few finishes off Mechagodzilla. He doesn't live up to his build-up. He kind of just gets tossed around like a rag doll, and it's kind of lame. And also, he doesn't really help Godzilla. He more so gets in Godzilla's way. And that scene when Mechagodzilla is unloading all of his weapons, like firing his lasers, his rockets at Mechagodzilla and King Caesar, it kind of looks like King Caesar is just trying to hide behind Godzilla so that he doesn't get hit. King Caesar is lame. Had he actually been more helpful and had better tag team combat with Mechagodzilla in this film, or against Mechagodzilla in this film, I wouldn't complain so much. But he doesn't, and he's lame. So I don't like King Caesar. Again, I like his design. I just wish his appearance was better. Other than that, though, that's all I have to say for pros and cons for Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. As for Terror of Mechagodzilla, I don't have nearly as much to say. But pro number one for Terror of Mechagodzilla is the continuity here is very, very strong. Like I said, the continuity between all the Showa Godzilla movies is kind of loose. But here it's very, very strong. It feels like Ishiro Honda just took that script and he just kept adding what he wanted to do to that script. It feels very fluid, and both movies flow into each other very well. And these two movies make for a great double bill. Part of the reason why I wanted to do these as a double feature. Um, though it's a little disappointing that the characters from Mechagodzilla don't show up in Terror, but still. But this will lead into pro number 2. The cast here, it's not as strong as Mechagodzilla 74, but overall the cast is decent for what it is. The main character who played Goro the main actor who played Goro in Godzilla vs. Megalon returns here to play Katsuhiko Sasaki. He returns as Ichinose. He's not quite as likable. Well, he's more likable than his character in Megalon. Like, he has more to do, and he has more to do with the story. And he's a bit more likable than he was in Megalon. But yeah, here he's got good chemistry with the rest of the characters. He has a good expertise that he brings to the table in dealing with the aliens. Though his chemistry with Katsura is strong, and you do buy these two as actually loving each other, even though it's a bit cringy and a bit cliche, but whatever, it still works. But overall, not nearly as much to say about the rest of the cast. They're competent. They work together, which is another thing that I like. They work together well, and there's no like bickering. There's no tension. It's just everybody's coming together to solve a problem. It's not quite as strong as as this movie's predecessor, but it is still like you get wrapped up in the camaraderie between all the characters in this film. Pro number 3 is the dark tone of this movie is quite strong when it works. Again, this being the first appearance of Ishiro Honda since properly discounting Revenge in 7 years. And this movie's tone does feel like, when it's dark, it feels pretty similar to to Destroy All Monsters. Like it's kind of grim. It feels a bit apocalyptic. It feels just dark and a bit gritty. And it's kind of a welcome pace, or it's kind of a bit of a welcome change of pace. And when it does work, it works quite well, in my opinion. Though more on that later. Though this definitely does also have to do, the dark tone, when it works, is so well helped by the return of Akira Ifukube doing this movie's score, which is pro number 4. The music in this movie is awesome. Mechagodzilla's new theme is freaking spectacular. It's not quite fun and catchy like Mechagodzilla 74's was. Here, it's doomy and gloomy and apocalyptic feeling. The da na 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 na. It's like a great like when Mifune and Katsura first discover that these aliens are working on Mechagodzilla. It's like a great oh shit moment, and the music perfectly encapsulates that. And the rest of we have the return of the Godzilla theme, which is welcomed. There's just more classic Akira Ifukube music cues that are used in this movie. They're a bit higher pitched, which helps with the superhero stuff for Godzilla in this movie. But yeah, this feels more like classic 60s Godzilla music, and it's great. Again, not much to say, but overall, yeah, the music is really, really solid. Damn it, I keep losing track. Pro number 5 is the human action scenes are the best of Ishiro Honda's career. We've stated many times in the past that Ishiro Honda doesn't know how to do human action. He can do kaiju action, but if there's a fight scene involving humans, more often than not, it's pretty damn piss poor. But here, the human action is very, very, very strong and well choreographed and well edited. Mostly, it's gunfights and like some people smacking some people around, but still, it's good. And it does more than Mechagodzilla 74 feel like a James Bond movie just in a Godzilla film. But those elements blend together very well. And thankfully, because the human action is so good, that element feels a lot stronger. Pro number 5. No, I really need to number my things. Pro number 6, excuse me. The monster fights 6 and 7 go into each other. The special effects are really good, and the fight scenes and monster action is very, very entertaining. Godzilla's first fight with Titanosaurus is very brief, but it's still kind of fun. It's the last half hour of this movie where it's just near nonstop action when Titanosaurus begins his rampage and then Mechagodzilla joins him, and then they start destroying Tokyo, and then Godzilla shows up and it's 1 versus 2 near constant kaiju action until the end of the movie. It's a lot of fun and it's very entertaining and fun to watch. And the effects, of course, are very, very great. Lots of explosions, lots of animated lasers going around, especially with Mechagodzilla. A lot more really good, like Megalon style hand-to-hand combat between Godzilla and Titanosaurus. Like Godzilla's full-on punching Titanosaurus and just beating the snot out of him. But then the two monsters beat the snot out of Godzilla. Hang on one sec. Family and father life here. Okay. I don't give a shit about Ghostbusters Afterlife. Not a Ghostbusters fan. Anyway, yeah, lots of explosions, lots of animated lasers. The suitimation is really, really solid. The Titanosaurus suit looks really, really good. The wind effects for Titanosaurus's tail look absolutely phenomenal. The miniature sets are well made. Again, the explosions are great. That was Terryoshi Nakano's forte, was explosions, which they reached their peak in The Return of Godzilla. More on that when I review Return of Godzilla again. Yeah, overall, the effects, there's not really any flubs as far as I'm concerned. Well, there's a couple shitty blue screen and composite shots, especially when Titanosaurus is about to step on 2 kids. But like Mechagodzilla 74, that's really it, is that one bad composite shot. Yeah, the effects are top notch in this movie, and the monster fights and the kaiju action is very fun and very entertaining. But unfortunately, I actually have quite a few cons with Terror of Mechagodzilla. The first one being this movie has an inconsistent tone. The darker elements sometimes don't gel very well with the more fun, campy, lighthearted 70s elements of Godzilla, where like you have this dark and depressing story, and then you still have the campy superhero Godzilla running around in this movie. Just at times the tone doesn't quite mesh very well. And I will also say this, just getting this out of the way now, I do think this is the second weakest Godzilla movie of the 70s era, because the return of Ishiro Honda, since this series, I mean, Yoshimitsu Banno got it started, but the formula for the 70s Godzilla series had been pretty well cemented with what Jun Fukuda was doing. And then comes along Ishiro Honda, and there are lots of points where Ishiro Honda works, but then there's others where it just doesn't. This also has to do with the fact that this is more a strong nitpick, but I just don't find Mechagodzilla to be as threatening as he was in this movie's predecessor. Like he had a personality in Mechagodzilla 74. Here, not really. He's just a giant robot who goes around just destroying things soullessly. That does work in that context because he is just a giant robot superweapon, but just overall something feels different about Mechagodzilla in this movie. I can't quite put my finger on it. He's just different in this movie, and it's not quite as good as the film's predecessor. Number 3 is the overall lack of monster action. It's really only saved for the film's last 35 minutes. There's Titanosaurus' appearance at the beginning, but then there's really Titanosaurus' first rampage, and then Godzilla's first appearance, and then the last 25 minutes where it's nonstop monster action, which that's great, but it leads into another problem that I have. Con number 4 is the lack of Godzilla. No, 5, yeah. The lack of Godzilla. Godzilla, not counting stock footage from the very beginning, does not show up until 52 minutes into this movie. And this movie is only barely 84 minutes long. He fights Titanosaurus briefly, and then he finally shows up to fight both Titanosaurus and Mechagodzilla at the very end of the film. It's fun, and it's great, but also Godzilla suffers majorly from big gun syndrome once again in this movie. Not quite as bad as Godzilla versus Megalon. Partially no, I'd say it's like a hair's breadth difference. Godzilla has a bit of a stronger presence in this movie than he does in Megalon, but similar to that movie, he doesn't show up mainly until the last 20 or 25 minutes, and that's a little disappointing. But because this is mostly a Mechagodzilla movie, it sort of makes sense, but then that has to do with the fact that Mechagodzilla himself doesn't have a whole lot of screen time either. He's only active once in the entire film, and that's at the very end. And he is fun to watch, but like I said, there's just something different about Mechagodzilla in this movie that's not quite as good. Con number 6 is Titanosaurus. I hate to say it, but Titanosaurus has a cool design and kind of an annoying roar, but I've never been a big fan of Titanosaurus. Again, I like his design, but he's just too basic and simple. He feels just a bit too boring and bland, especially in these 70s movies. All the monsters in the 70s era, except Titanosaurus, have something wacky about them. Titanosaurus just seems like a regular giant monster. No real special abilities. He's pretty much just a giant animal, or as they say in this movie, a giant dinosaur. It's just kind of lame. And he has an extremely annoying roar. Titanosaurus definitely, in my opinion, has the most annoying roar of the entire Showa Godzilla series. More than King Ghidorah. Con number 7 is this movie's not paced very well, in my opinion. It just kind of flips and flops from being fast and slow, and then fast and then slow. This also has to do with the lack of kaiju action, so that certainly doesn't help. And my last con overall with Terror, this just feels kind of like a downer, bittersweet ending to the series. It's not quite as fun as its predecessor. It's a bit more dark and bleak and depressing. And upon this most recent viewing, because I had so much fun with the previous 4 Godzilla movies, I then get to this one, and A, it's the last Showa Godzilla movie, but also B, it ends with almost everybody dying. It ends with Godzilla ambiguously going off into the ocean to never be seen again. It's just a bit depressing and sad. So actually, I'm just going to cut it here. Final thoughts. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla is one of my favorite Godzilla movies of all time, and I give it a very strong 9.5 out of 10. Terror of Mechagodzilla, I do say, is the second weakest 70s movie, but it is still very good and a lot of fun and very entertaining, but not quite as entertaining as its predecessor. But it is still one of my favorites. So I will be giving it a strong 8 out of 10. And as always, go out and if you find a giant monster that's going to be fighting against another giant robot, run. And I will see you guys in the next video.